Hello, everybody, and welcome to Here We Go Again. What is going on in Israel? Episode 35. President of Iran dies in a helicopter crash. Is the UN a force for good or a force for evil? Multiple countries recognize so-called Palestine, and tense power struggles in the Israeli cabinet. This is Here We Go Again. Okay, so before we begin our first topic, I would like to give you all a reminder to please subscribe to our channel. It helps you receive notifications of our videos and it helps us get more viewers. So this week, the president of Iran, Raisi, has died in a helicopter crash. There was a back and forth on, whether or not it was an accident, whether or not it was malicious.
It was a helicopter.
It was the Mossad agent Eli Copter that took over. There was a lot of jokes going around, but the more serious part that we want to talk about is first of all, if and what are the actual ramifications for his death, and the second part is how did the world react to his death. So let's actually start with the second one. As a result of his death, there were reactions across the globe. A lot of condolences from both from the United States and from the UN. And I want to know what are your thoughts on the matter? Is that what you would expect? Is that different than you would expect?
What I would expect, given the state of the world, is this. Meaning it's not shocking that we're in such a horrible place. We need to remember that the United Nations, as a body, and this is particularly hard for Israelis to accept. Most conservative Americans are more aligned with the concept. It's an evil, corrupt body at its core. It never served a function beyond promoting evil in the world, and it was always going to be that. It was a failed experiment 5 minutes into its creation. The fact that the state of Israel still leans on its legitimacy as its existence is a problem that we need to get over.
But it was theoretically, it was created to stop from the Holocaust happening again.
Yeah, exactly. The point of the body was to try to say, let's build a joint force that can help govern and a judiciary. We'll get to the IJC in a minute, but they were trying to create a government for governments, which was doomed to failure, if for no other reason than the democratic style of it all. Meaning, a democracy of nations implies that there is equality of nations. It implies that cultures have equal value and that their opinions on issues are of equal weight. Now, that it is true that there's veto powers and that the main world powers from then, that's also a problem, right? That feel like Russia has a main position is absurd. They're not a considerable force in the world anymore. Either way, these people can't possibly be the arbiters of what is or isn't okay in the world. It would never make sense. The majority of countries don't have any valid opinion to be given, and that is why we've constantly seen, since the formation of the UN, that it's only exclusively been used to promote evil and terror. Again and again and again and again and again. They vote to uphold evil in the world. They don't vote to condemn the bad regimes.
Do you think that's on purpose? Do you think they're sitting there playing and saying, we only like terrorism? I think it's a little extreme to say that.
I think you're falling into the trap of we. When you're talking about the UN, there is no we. America is a we because it's a nation. Israel is a we because it's a nation with some fundamental values underpinning it. There is no we in the UN. There are interested players, but states have own vested interests, and every player in the UN is sent there to promote its state's interests, not to promote justice in the world. That's silly, right? We're not children. Come on.
No, but you're assuming that the most of the nations in the world have an interest as nations for terrorism. That's also a little extreme.
I am saying that there is a multiplicity of Islamic nations in the world. There's a lot of them. I think that the West has been taken in and duped by its own concepts. The West fundamentally wants to believe that people are good. Humanity at its core is good. That's the left-wing ideology through and through, right? Progressivism and the left in Israel and in America fundamentally holds that if you just keep giving and you solve the pain point, then the people will then be good. Because they're inherently good, they're just suffering and therefore doing evil things. That's the whole take on the Palestinian people. And it's just not true. It's not true, and you see it in the way the Arabs talk to the Americans in English or in Hebrew, and how they talk in Arabic on their own media. They don't even hide it. They just know that the West is going to ignore that and hear the things it wants to hear. I think it is a concerted and clear effort by the Arab nations of the world to take advantage of the naivete of the West. Israel falls dead into the middle of that. We fall for it again and again and again and again and again because it's something that we just at our core want to believe because it's what we believe about our brothers. They're not our brothers. People that were raised in different environments believe in different core values. Because of that, you're not shooting for the same end goal. They're your enemy by definition. There is no peace that could ever have been achieved because we want different end results.
But that's a question of education in the end of the day. Now, I can agree with you that you could potentially say, I'm not going to just take a population of Afghanistan and just make them into good people tomorrow. But on a theoretical level, I could accept that it's not practical, but on a theoretical level, it's not a genetic issue. You're not assuming that when the baby is born and he is a 4-month-old Afghani, that he is by definition an Islamic terrorist. That's not,
Of course, it's not genetic. Nothing's genetic. I mean, besides let's say your morals and personality are not genetic, though there are very interesting studies on left-wing and right-wing politics and how genetics play into that. That's not the point, right? That would be racist. They are raised in a culture. Culture tells you, at its core, before we start getting into any political debates, what is good and what is bad. You want to get into the, origins of ethics, whether that is religion or human, it doesn't matter. Something is underpinned. That then develops into a society and education. The West's failure at forcing democracy on many of these attempts at this point, it clearly illustrates that. The Arab world is not ready for democracy, except for the few nations, and even those ones, meaning take the good Arab nations. Which are those? Let's see, the UAE to an extent.
Theoretically, ones of the Abraham Accords, Bahrain,
The modern Arab countries, the ones that open themselves up to the West, still are not democracies. It doesn't work. It doesn't work for that type of people. You cannot impose democracy from the top down because the people don't want it. They don't agree with
Your
it.
issue is not the educating or fixing a culture. Your issue is with the fact that they're not a democracy and you can't force a democracy on people who don't want a democracy.
Well, no, because democracy wouldn't solve our problem. Meaning, a democracy of the Palestinian people is a terrorist state. We know that by every poll.
No, I understand that, but what I'm not understanding is I still don't see historically the differentiation of why we're stating it is impossible for these Arab countries, the extreme Islamic countries, it's impossible for them to become Western and to become,
No.
mixed.
It's not impossible. It's impossible to make them into that.
It's fine. Impossible for the West to enforce it, but then we did the same in Germany and Japan. We discussed this last episode. I'm not understanding how. No, I can accept that the factors are different in the details,
Yes.
but in the end of the day,
Denazification.
there was denazification, and in Japan we did
Yeah.
it as well. The Western
And it worked.
civilized world succeeded in creating fair
And
countries.
it worked. How
So,
did it work?
I don't know. I don't understand why it's different or if it worked then, I'm not understanding why it inherently can't work now.
Okay, so in order to denazify, and to take a population and make it no longer extreme, you have to take the opposite approach than what Israel typically tries and what the left tries, right? The idea of give them the things, give them a structure, give them an environment, create voting polls, that will never work. It actually only works through force. It only works through controlling the population and the content. When we fixed Japan, we being America, when America fixed Japan, it controlled what they talked in schools. Everything needed to go through imperial approval of the United States. We took over Japan as a country. America occupied it until Japan was ready to run itself and be an ally. The same was true in Germany. Germany, first we devastated the country. There was nothing left. We toppled their governance. And no one was talking about, well, before we knock down the Nazis, we have to figure out who's there in their stead. No, we dismantled a government, we took over, and then we let them rebuild themselves. These populations need to get to a point where Iran's a great example, right? We went from it being a moderate, decent place to it being the terror state of the world, and it'll go back. It will. It's a shame that the West is not in a place where it can enforce that and it can try to push that Israel's failed to do that time and again. I don't understand. But the people are there. We see it. We see it in the streets of Iran. They are suffering. They are suffering under tyrannical terrorist rule. Only they can fix this. It's only them. And that's true for the Palestinian people as well. Until you start seeing the Palestinian street talk about wanting to be Western and not saying death to America,
well,
the conversation is pointless.
They can't do that until they're not in danger.
Why? No, sorry. No.
They'll be slaughtered.
No. There were official, I think they're called the Red Rose, the White Rose. There were official organizations against the Nazis in Germany. There were Germans that stood up and argued and fought against Nazism.
And were they killed?
They were chased down, yeah. But they existed. Because some people had decent worldviews. I don't accept this idea that the Palestinians are just too scared to speak up. I don't think that's true. I think even when they talk in their own things, even when they're not on TV, they don't say those things.
I mean, I hear you, but I think it's deeper than that. I think it's not a matter of them not being too scared to talk. I think it's a matter of... I also have a hard time believing, when you say with the polls that 80 whatever % of them all believe in Hamas and are happy for the October massacre. I definitely think the numbers are high. I have a problem with the poll, because by definition it's the people that answer the poll, and I'm sure that those who
That's
are
true
against,
for all polling.
Well, yes, but polling in any type of dictatorship is a problem. Polling in a non-free society is much more difficult. It's like polling for how many people support Putin. You poll right now for how many people support Putin, you're going to get really high numbers.
Your issue there is that Putin controls the poll. But the poll isn't run within the Palestinian Authority, it's run on them. And the answering is anonymous, so I don't think it's fair to discount that.
So second of all, I think, and I agree with you, that there's a problem here, but I think that it's so far that it's actually, they don't even have a concept of a different option. And this is true, by the way, for the question of how we said international media and how much people are only getting one side of a certain story. They're missing so much information that from their perspective, this is the only option that really exists. Now, again, I'm not defending them saying, oh, that turns them into good people. But I'm saying that, when you and I are sitting here and we understand that there's options here. The option is you could go for peace. You could go for, destruction. We know that peace could theoretically bring the Palestinians, theoretically. Peace could bring the Palestinian people to, grow and flourish, but has the risk of more terrorist attacks and dying because we didn't kill them. And complete annihilation, or whatever it was, complete toppling of the entire area, means that there will definitely not be any terrorist attacks, but also a lot of unquote innocent people will die. Like that was obviously very oversimplification of the options, but you theoretically understand that there's different options here, and you could weigh them out. But you agree that I feel that many of the people that are living in Gaza don't even understand the different options that are in front of them. And therefore, obviously,
they've lived through.
I don't think they get the media of it. They just
No, but they've lived through the options. They lived through years of peace at a time. Years of Israel not touching anything within Gaza.
Well, that's what you feel.
No, it's a fact.
No, but the facts don't matter. It matters what they understand. If they're understanding and they're being told every single day in school and later on, being told how they're blocking the ports and how they're killing this and how every single time that a terrorist goes out and comes to Israel and kills random citizens in the streets and then gets slaughtered, what do you think the messages they're getting? Our hero went out to war, our hero was sent, and the occupation slaughtered him.
Yeah.
So then they're not free. So it doesn't.
So what?
What do you mean? So they
So
understand that the
what?
occupation is evil. It's
Yes,
pure
and
evil.
therefore they hate us. So what?
So and then they're told that the solution is to get rid of us.
And
I'm not understanding the question.
what point does that make?
The point is that I think that they are missing so much information that they are not capable of making a fair. When we say about the poll, the fact that 80+% of them are for the October 7th massacre, I think that poll is failed because I think they have such a misunderstanding of what even happened in that massacre. I think they don't even understand what happened. They think the massacre that they're heroes because that's what the whole went and fought in Israel and tried to save them.
So let's pretend that we don't know and don't have all of the footage of people calling their mama and papa to celebrate how many people they decapitated.
They don't.
No, who were the mama and papa?
No,
they were people that lived there.
Obviously, are evil people there.
No, but it wasn't even that. Isn't the terrorist?
Population.
It's just that they'll bless God when the terrorist succeeds, and that was always true, right? At the end of the day, they gave out candies, and I'm sorry, did we see the streets when the terrorists were what brought the hostages in, and the celebrations that were going on in the streets, watching these young women and children being taken off trucks? Did we not see video of a young, how old was that boy? 4, 5, getting abused by a bunch of other Arab kids because he was blonde and a Jew? Come on.
Right.
And let's put all that aside for a minute. Let's take your position, or take the supposition that you're right, that they are evil and it's not their fault. They're evil because of a lack of knowledge and education. By the way, generally speaking, everyone will make that argument against people who disagree with them, right? People on the left don't agree with me because they just don't understand the data. Because they're just wrong fundamentally about the truth.
You're stating that.
Yeah, I'm saying that's where you'll always say that the people on the other side just don't have the information you have, and therefore they're wrong.
Well, no,
or they're stupid.
Right, okay, but
Either
not
way,
to get to the thing, but that's crucial because that's the entire idea for why you believe that they have a right. If you're talking about that topic, but they have the right for their opinion and they have the right in a democratic country. Like you don't hate them even if they are wrong with their information. That's exactly the point. Do you understand what I'm saying? You're saying I disagree with you. I think you're wrong, but because if they did have all the exact information as you, if they had the exact, you guys have the same brain, but their assumption in the end of that information was, we should give up the town that you live in and give it to the Palestinians and they should all live here and you shouldn't be living here, then I can understand not the word hating that person, but like that person to me is evil, because if you understand the information that I have right now and you think that giving them more land, which will actually end up killing you in Kfar Saba, then you're evil. But the reason I genuinely don't think he's evil, and I accept the fact that he has a view, is because he has different information than I do. We look at certain things in different purviews, and we also acquire information. He didn't come here. He doesn't see this the situation that's going on here, so he's basing his suppositions on different information. And sorry, we have to be fair that you and I are also basing our suppositions on the information that we are given. Okay?
Of course.
So anything that we are talking about in Gaza, okay? You did not go fight in Gaza. You were not in there. So all of the information that you're working on is the information that you're given by only Western civilization. Okay? If it's with Israel, if it's the United States. Now, I'm not saying it's by definition wrong. I'm saying
we have the advantage of hearing firsthand people, right? People in America don't. Or most don't. Right? We actually can talk to people that have been in Gaza. And we have. So we're not just getting what the media feeds us, we're also getting what people we know for our whole lives who are coming out of there are telling us, and the people that we trust. We trust these people not to lie to us, because they're our friends. And why would they? And frankly, we agree with most things. So even if it was as horrible as the Arabs were saying, a lot of us probably wouldn't care so much. So why would they lie?
Just to share it, you're saying, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Am I going to be upset about it? No, I'm not going to be upset about it.
Right.
But again, let's pull back for a minute. Let's say you're right. So what? So what?
So I'm just saying that I don't think it inherently means that the people are evil.
And, therefore?
Well, what it means...
What conclusion are you trying to get to with that information?
The conclusion, back to the question, the idea of, is there an ability to make that... Is there an ability... I stated in last week's podcast that on a theoretical level, if you removed all weapons from Gaza... completely. I don't care how you did it. It's not actually possible because of the way they structured their tunnel system. But let's say I could flick a switch and take away all weapons in Gaza. So I agree, and I'm stating tomorrow. Is there going to be peace tomorrow? Absolutely not. I mean, there might not be death because they won't be able to, but I'm saying there's not going to be peace tomorrow, okay? There's not going to be peace in 5 years from now. But I was stating, and I do think that there is... Why am I saying it's theoretical again? Because you can't actually take all the weapons away, but if you could have, I am stating that I think that if you go 20 years from now, it is possible that the certain populations of Gaza that are not inherently evil, that's what I'm claiming exist, will have the potential to be able to become stronger. Why? Because, sorry, I just have to add, not just that you have to have the weapons, you have to have the weapons and control the security, because you have to make sure people are safe to view their opinions. But if you're not forming democracy, there is no governance. The governance is Israel, from my perspective, for the next 20 years, okay? Or some European country that we decide to govern. But I give them the ability to, and therefore, when these certain types of people and groups that can't form today, because if they form, they'll just be killed, might be able to form and give out views of more peace and more prosperity. And then in 20 years from now, maybe they can form a better education system and better software. I'm just saying it's possible.
No, great. So then put together a plan. It'll be called Oslo. Try.
No.
Oh, no, we did.
No, Oslo was giving them weapons. That's what I'm saying.
What do you think?
That's what Galen's saying right now.
How do you think this works? Right? You go in, you clean out all weaponry. A body comes up that says we are the moderate body that represents the Palestinians.
No, I'm saying there is no body. That's what I'm saying.
No, eventually there is. You're saying you're saying groups rise up.
No, with no weapons.
Fine, no weapons.
Yeah,
fine.
They can lead. They can lead. They're not.
How do they control the population?
What do you mean? Israel controls the population from a security perspective.
Police.
No, so
that was the point. The point was you have to have police, right? Because they steal and they rob the shop and they rape and whatever, because they're a society like any other. Worse than any other, but let's say like any other. You need a police force. That's how the Rashop came to be. The PLO came to be as a police force for the internal Palestinian issues, while the army retains security. That's what Yehuda Shomron is. Yehuda Shomron is the army controls security, and they were given a police force to police themselves. That was the Oslo deal. It doesn't work. And why am I interested? And that's a more fundamental failure. That's a fundamental failure of the Israeli people to not detach themselves from these Arabs. Arabs, right? Because there is no such thing as a Palestinian. It's made up. It's nonsense. We bought into it because we don't know how to talk. We don't know how to play basic international games. And everyone else does, and we sit here like buffoons. Israel has this idea of not being frayerim, and then Israel as a state is the biggest fryer there is on every metric. We don't do even the most basic elements of geopolitics. Like it's really sad. People get displaced. Throughout all of history, every conflict, not just in the past, also today, conflict occurs, people are displaced. They move somewhere else, they start new lives. Instead, we created multi-generational refugees. And we, not America, let's not blame anyone else, we created a reality in which there's this people that have an ultimate grievance against us. It's like slavery in America. We did this to them. Never mind that the vast majority of them left on their own, right? And let's never mind that the Arab nations are the ones that told them to leave. It wasn't even Israel. Let's say all of that's not true. Let's say their side of the narrative is true. And we came in by force during a military war, and we took over the territory, and we didn't give it back. So what? So what? This carrying of an original...
So the people around and the American population and all the people that are rioting across the globe are rioting to say that's not acceptable. That's not okay to do that.
Yeah,
give it
because
back.
We created this environment. Again, why is no one rioting about every other group of millions of refugees in the world?
Okay, but what you're basically saying is the more of a bully I am, the less people will come to me. Yeah, okay, that's true. You know what? If you came in, that doesn't make it right.
Yes, it does.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it right. It means that if if a new principal comes to a high school and starts saying everyone here has to come dressed, with the black shirt to his neck, whatever it was, yeah, if he comes strong enough and the first 4 people that come and say something, he kicks them out of school and sends them out. Okay, so he just formed a communism.
So take the same idea. Yeah, because a principal is a dictator, obviously, right? There is no democracy amongst people who are not your civilians. It's absurd. This idea that we even need to give a crap about the democratic status of the people of Gaza or their well-being I don't care about the people in Sudan. I don't care about the people in North Africa. I don't care.
Yeah, but many people disagree with what you just said.
I still don't care.
Okay, I'm saying, it doesn't. You're saying I don't care, but it doesn't make it correct. It doesn't make it the right moment to say I don't. Now,
wait, it's the right in my opinion. It's right in my opinion on a moral level.
It's different to come and say my life is more important because in the end of the day, it's my life and my family, my people around me, and that comes first. And therefore, sorry, if it's me or you, I come first. No. That's very different than saying I honestly just don't. I don't care. I don't care what's happening over there. I don't care that kids are dying. I don't care that kids are starving. I don't care. I just don't care. That's what that statement is not accepted by a vast majority of the population.
I don't think that's true. I think that statement is accepted by all people across the planet on all issues except for the ones they cherry pick.
That's no contradiction. Everyone has, Bill Gates talks about this. Even him, one of the richest human beings in the world, is still limited in what he can do. Just limited. There's time in the world.
I'm talking about just caring.
So that's what I'm saying.
Just caring.
No, even caring. Even caring has a limitation. Even your ability to care about something is limited.
And how do you pick it?
It's still very different. So that was the point I made before. You can say, I have something else that's prioritized above it. Okay, and that's what they'll state also here. I can say that, but in the end of the day, saying, if you're going to come to me and say, and by the way, you could also not care. It just doesn't make it the correct thing to do. Let's take a non-conflicting question, the classic one, okay? And happens to be, again, Bill Gates is working on it right now about this kit for pregnant women in Africa to be able to, they're dying, every 2 minutes a woman dies in birth in Africa, or 2 minutes across the world, but most of it's happening in Africa. And it's this little kit, whatever it was, costs like $30, and it could save like 75-80% of the women. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now I can accept you saying I honestly don't really care about women in Africa dying, but even you're gonna agree that's not a moral statement. When it's again saying I'm limited in what I care about, I have things around me. If I came to you and because let's agree, if I came to you and said, look, if you just click on this button right here, just sign this paper. You don't have to cost anything. Just the 2 minutes of your time, actually sign this paper, and there will be no more women in Africa dying right now. I'm assuming you'd sign it. I mean, you maybe think it has geopolitical things, but theoretically, you'd sign it.
Yeah, because there's a cost-benefit analysis to everything. So
that's what they're saying right now. So that's exactly my point. My point is that I think there's something, it's oversimplifying when you say, well, you didn't care about, the big attack that there was on Miss Rachel this past week and a half that's been all over. And Miss Rachel from YouTube, by the way, for those who are not listening, a big controversy that she went out in a whole fundraiser supporting the children of Gaza, and totally didn't mention anyone in Israel and people, and it really exploded. But I'm gonna not defend her for a second, but plays devil's advocate for a second. You could say that about anything, why do you care about the Sudanian children? Why do you care about the kids in Syria? Why do you care things? And I could say the other answer is that if I was sitting and I was a college student in America, okay, then I'm going to say, guess what? I could shout all I want about Syria and shout all I want and then get mad, but it's not going to help. It's not going to change anything. So therefore, that same cost-benefit thing, so I'm going to ruin my semester, I'm going to spend all the thing college, but it's not going to change anything. But we know, just like many other left-wing abilities and agendas have such a control of government, we know, and we could see it happening right now with Biden, in the end of the day, it worked. Again, it backfired. I don't want to get to the specific detail, but I'm saying, at the end of the day, they went out, they rioted sorry, hope that didn't make a lot of noise for you. They rioted about Palestine, and then it affected governing because they understand that they have the ability to change. You do agree that even if they burnt down UCLA for the war in Yemen, it wasn't changing anything. It's not changing anything.
Exactly.
So that's my point. So I'm saying it's unfair. Like,
why is it not changing anything? What's the qualitative difference?
Wait, this I could agree with. The problem is the Israeli government.
Yeah.
100%. I'm not saying. I'm saying that I'm understanding the people. I'm understanding the person that's saying it's not inherently hypocritical that someone that was quiet for the last year and a half and didn't mention anything about all the other people dying across the world and now decided to call up about Palestine. I don't know if it can be hypocritical, but it's also not hypocritical because he has
I'm not interested in the college students. They don't interest me because, frankly, they're idiots. Like, they're just highly unintelligent individuals. Their IQ levels are very low. They don't know what they're talking about. Just look at anyone interviewing anyone on those campuses. They don't know anything. That's just
Well,
college.
That's the next generation of America.
No, it's just college. It's academia, right? Academia is a blight on society. It has been for a very, very long time. It was true basically since before the Vietnam War, and then on it's gotten worse and worse and worse. We need to be done with it. We need to be away with it. I'm not interested. I don't care about them. They're not making decisions. Youth are youth. We as a country, we as a nation, do not understand our priorities, do not understand our responsibilities. What you were describing was empathizing with a wrong in the world. Everyone's capable of doing that. That doesn't mean you care. It means you empathize. Okay? It means there are children starving, and I see a picture of a child with a sunken rib cage because he's hungry, and I feel sad. I empathize. That child has a mother who desperately wants to feed him. It's horrible. It's also not my responsibility. That is true of the people of Gaza as well. They are not my responsibility. I don't care in that I don't have to act to do anything on their behalf, particularly because they share a border with an Arab nation.
Okay, I think that they're not your responsibility for the example you gave. They're not responsibility because you can't really help. I think that's what it comes down to.
No, they're not my
Okay,
responsibility.
I think that if you were able to help, back to the example, which we agree is not a realistic example, but if you right now were sitting with a piece of paper and it was a minute of your time and you were able to save whatever it was, 5,000 people, I would say it is your responsibility. I would say it's your responsibility because you're able to, because there's an opportunity right in front of you to save 5,000 randomly means you're never going to meet or not in your country.
Assuming there were no costs to that.
That's what I'm saying. 100%.
Okay, but meaning the argument goes to, well, then there really shouldn't be any poor people in Mexico because America's right there. Why should Mexico have any problems? America has money and they're right next door. That doesn't make it their problem. You can try to help. You can. That doesn't make you a responsibility. It doesn't make you your problem. We made the Arabs our problem. We made the Palestinian people our problem, and that ownership was the original sin. Kicking them out wasn't the original sin.
And what would you say by saying that we made it their problem by taking over all of their borders and making sure?
But we didn't take their borders.
No, yes, we did. Well, okay, you can split the problem with Egypt, okay? But even through
I don't have to split the problem as long as I didn't literally lock you in. Right, that's what the world and the left and the crazies on college believe. It's not true. As long as I didn't literally lock you in, then no, it's not my problem. Leave that way. This is my country. This border here, why? You don't have a right to enter my country. Just like no one has a right to enter America. You don't have a right. It's my country.
Yeah, but why does Egypt have any more responsibility than you?
I'm not saying they do.
So, okay.
I'm saying it's only your responsibility when you are the one besieging them.
Okay, but if you and Egypt are blockading them, okay, so it's a ping pong game.
If we're doing it together,
fault, it's my fault.
If we're doing it together as an agreement, then it's a joint effort. Then jointly, we're deciding to control these people. And then the world should ask why. And the why is because they're terrorists. The people living in Gaza are terrorists. I'm sure there are some kids who are not yet terrorists, but they're terrorists. And that is why Egypt doesn't want them. It's why Jordan has, 80% population Palestinian, and they cannot get their act together. Literally everywhere these people have gone, every country, they've acted with terror, not just towards Israel, but towards the local sovereign. Egypt has so much terror problems in Sinai. And these come from the same people. It's ISIS, but it's all the same ideology and the same people. And that is why no one wants them. Why is the Arab world not trying to help? Because nobody wants these people because of their violent, anti-establishment, I don't know if that's the right word, culture. You're not going to get anywhere. You need to, meaning option one was detach. That was always the deal. That was the selling point of the Hitnut coup. 2005, we left Gaza, and we didn't besiege it, right? That's a lie. We left it, and the idea was they're going to get ports, they'll get an airport, they'll get everything they need to make a really beautiful enclave. They have a beach, they have natural resources, we gave them greenhouses, we set them up. The terrorists took over. They killed the people that we put in power, those so-called moderates. Hamas weren't there before, right? This thing the media is trying to sell us now of you need to get rid of Hamas and then put another body in, and that's where you're stuck. We put another body in when there was no Hamas.
Well, they clearly weren't strong enough, but yeah.
We gave them guns.
And
And
Galland would say, not enough.
and they came in and killed them. They rose up, killed those people. Right now, making the distinction between the PLO and Hamas is its own problem. Let's pretend and buy that narrative for a minute. At that point, as a nation, we had to say, okay, now we don't have a partner across that border. We have terrorists across that border, self-declared terrorists. Of course you lock the border. It's not a siege, it's security. Like it's basic common sense, and even the most left-wing progressive American actually understands that if they actually thought about it for a minute, right? If ISIS took over Mexico, literally, killed the president of Mexico, took apart the country, and made it ISIS XO, America would lock that border down harder than anything in the world. Forget, like, retaliation. America would lock borders, security. No one from ISIS is coming into America. That's stupid. Israel never understood that. And today, we clearly see that we still don't.
Okay. So let's move on to an additional topic.
We wanted to talk about other things?
What?
We wanted to talk about
Oh,
other
yeah,
things?
we thought maybe we should talk about some other things, yes. Although the idea is to go into a very open conversation, and I like when things flow in their own direction. Okay, so Bezalel Smotrich, the Minister of Finance, happened to be discussed last week as well. It's not an agenda question. It's just that a lot of things are happening around his position and as Minister of Finance and the minister in the Ministry of Defense, discussed in the last episode as well. So in this past week, two interesting things happened, and I want to discuss them both. The first one is there was a declaration by multiple countries declaring, how do you say? Recognizing, thank you. Recognizing the Palestinian state. Unclear what that even means when there is no state border governance or anything, but they're theoretically declared, recognized the Palestinian state. And as a result of that, Bezalel Smotrich went straight to Bibi, the prime minister, and he made a couple things clear. I'm not going to touch all of them, but just to specify, the first thing he did is he says he wants to immediately bring in something that's called the Moatza Letechnun B'Yehuda V'Shomron, which is the Council of Judea and Samaria for approving building and approve tens of thousands of apartments and housing units in Judea and Samaria. And the other important one that I want to discuss is the idea that he basically told, so the PLO is, in the end of the day, completely living on our both securing them and our funding them. Okay, now for our listeners, they're saying, I don't understand, Israel funds the PLO. Well, yes, it's in a backwards kind of way, but basically the PLO, the only way that taxes are given to the PLO is that we actually take the taxes for them. We collect the taxes and then we give it to the PLO for them to be able to fund themselves. And as it goes through our Ministry of Finance, so Bezalel Smotrich already in the beginning of the war came out and said he's stopping the passing of money. He's stopping, we're not going to fund a entity that is our enemy and an entity that calls for our death, and still until this moment will not supports the October 7th massacre. And then as a solution in between, they said, we're going to pass the money to Norway, a so-called moderate.
Norway pitched that.
Norway came to us. Thank you for the correction. So Norway came and said, we are, as an outside entity, transfer the money to us, and then we will transfer the money over to the PLO. Before I get to it, can you explain, assuming that was a good plan, what's the difference? Why does that solve any problem?
It was a technicality. It was a technical difference. From what I understood, and I didn't dig too deep into it, I believe Israel was sending the money to Norway, and Norway was using that kind of as a deposit, and then Norway was paying the PLO, and Norway's holding our money. The idea being that the Israeli money didn't go to them, Norway's paying them, and Norway's holding a, what's it called? security deposit essentially from Israel.
Oh, and I think the idea was that we could take it back, right, or something like
Right.
that. Well, the idea was that way the money's getting to them for now, but then if they ever screw us, it's not just that we're stopping to fund it; we actually can retroactively
Right.
take the
And
money
that's the
back.
threat being made here, that he's going to demand the money back.
Agreed. So one of the things that they said now is he also said as a result of them of these countries recognizing the so-called Palestinian state that he is stopping the money from going to the PLO and stopping the funding of the PLO. And specifically, Norway was the first country to come out and recognize the so-called Palestinian state, and therefore, Bezalel Smotrich came
Well,
and said,
in this little run.
yes, currently in the last week,
Meaning it doesn't mean anything because there's already, I think, 100 and something countries that recognize Palestinian state technically.
No, 100%. But if right now, if Norway is coming and saying we are an outer party, a
Right.
third
Norway
party
can no
that's-
longer hold a neutral position when they took a position.
Agreed.
Obviously.
But the real move here is not really against Norway itself. It's the idea that there is no more. He's not going to transfer any money to the PLO, which really it can cause the PLO to just fall apart. So
yeah, and as we've seen time and again, ultimately, Netanyahu will make sure that doesn't happen. The PLO obviously has to be dismantled, and like everything else, we are incapable of making basic decisions.
okay, and the So do you think these moves that Smotrich is saying were correct moves? Do you think that they're the right thing that should be done?
I mean, it was always the right thing, right? I mean, why would we be giving them any money at any point? Because we are scared that they can't pay their officers, the same officers who keep being involved in terrorist attacks, and well, they're part of the PLO, but his nephew is the guy in Hamas who we just assassinated. Come on, like, we play this game, they laugh at us, and we keep it up because we cannot get past our own Western values.
I mean, although the theoretical answer to that is saying that if they take it down, then you're just saying Hamas is going to take over there as well. Yes, Hamas is really already in control there, but at least there's somebody that's sharing security measures with us.
Okay,
and
but you're going back to that initial failure of an idea that creating economic prosperity or comfortable living for your enemy will then make them not hate you. I'm going to go back to why do we care? The left and even the center in Israel will tell you, why do we care? We care because if they fall apart, then nobody's going to stop the terrorists on that side. They work with our security to help stop acts of terror. Okay. You know what else would work? Us doing it.
well, that's the other side of the
Let's
equation.
remember the existence of the PLO didn't stop the first Intifada and didn't stop the second Intifada or anything that happened in between. You know what did? We did. Chomat Magen. We came in with overwhelming military force, we confiscated weaponry, and we started acting. Only then, terrorism stopped. Do we do that in conjunction with the PLO? Yeah, we do. Should we? No. Absolutely not. And if you have a personnel issue, deal with your personnel issue. But again, a state's interest is in the security of its population. And that is where this failure keeps happening. This failure keeps happening because Israel prioritizes its international status, quote unquote,
which it fails at time and time again.
always, because it's a stupid endeavor, right? America doesn't care what Europeans think about Americans. Europeans make fun of Americans, and America is still the empire. Because they are. Why would I care? Right. Same thing for Israel. Israel constantly prioritizes its outward appearance over its fundamental security. And that is a dereliction of duty. That is why none of the people in government deserve to be in government. That is why our entire military needs to be dismantled and restructured. You're rotten at your core because you all forgot your one job. Not taking care of poor people, not even making sure there are good roads or schools. Your one job, really, is to secure your borders and to make sure that your civilians are safe. That's the concept of government, a joint militia that can defend a country. We're not doing that. So, when I get asked, when Pierce Morgan on his show, or anyone else in this middle zone, right-wing people will say, okay, I hear you, and obviously Hamas are terrorists, and we all hate terrorists, but 30,000 people and 15,000 children are dead. At what number does it get to be too much? At what number do we have to say, we just can't kill so many children? We just can't, so we have to stop? That answer is infinity plus everything. The answer is, your one civilian is worth all of theirs. That's what a state's job is. It is to defend your people at all costs, because no one gave you the right to sacrifice those people. That's not what your job was. That wasn't what you were elected to do.
Well, that's a democratic question you just stated.
No, it isn't.
What do you mean? Well, if someone running for elections in Israel came and said, I, as someone running for election, am planning to, do the Oslo Accords, and let's say was chosen at an overwhelming majority.
Wait, that's weren't, fine if you believe it.
Then I'm telling the people in the first place that I'm
if you believe it leads to security. The drive that gives you legitimacy is the betterment of your condition, not the betterment of someone else's condition. Right? They can do a risky thing.
I mean, I'll tell you where I have an issue with that, because the statement is that you could go to America, that basically saying anyone that's voting in America for Israel, except for, and be careful because I don't believe this is the majority. Yes, if you are voting for the security of Israel in America because you are intelligent enough to understand that Israel is crucial for the security of America, which is true, and that's a great reason.
Fine.
But you agree that there's a very large population in America that just loves Israel, is a supporter of Israel, and therefore saying, I'm going to vote for the person who's going to do good for Israel. That's not any different than what you just said. Happens to be our ally, but it's still not citizen. Israel is not a state of America.
You as a citizen have the right to vote for anything you want. That's democracy. The government is restricted by a role.
If the American government decided to prioritize the security of Israel over the border with Mexico.
That's not the situation. I mean, and if people were dying in Mexico, then that's a political argument, but they're still going to make the argument that doing that is better for America.
Maybe. I'm saying not
that's
inherently.
A political argument.
Not inherently. When Mike Pence went out and supporting Israel is because he loves Israel and he believes that God, and you told him that,
and he's anti-terrorist. No, you can have, what was he sacrificing by doing that? Nothing. The analogy is...
American soldiers.
The analogy is
American soldiers.
No. He didn't... No, there are no American soldiers here.
In this specific situation.
Exactly.
But it would be acceptable for an American president to come and say, I am sending soldiers to Israel to protect Israel because they're our ally, but let's be clear, not because we need them to survive for our security. That is true, but not for the reason. If he just said, because we all love Israel, and God told Israel...
Because they're our ally, but allegiances come with responsibilities and benefits. America made an allegiance.
But it's not inherently because it's better for America. It's because...
No,
but... it's the right thing to do.
No, wait. So again, the analogy is actually this. Does an American president have the right... Let's say a terrorist organization, let's say the Taliban, let's say anyone, says that you need to give us 50 Americans, citizens. You need to hand over 50 American citizens, any Americans, or we're going to be killing all of the people of Afghanistan. We're going to keep killing and raping the women and kids of Afghanistan until you, Biden, hand over 50 Americans. Do they have the right to do that? No.
Okay, but they do have the right to send 50 Americans to go fight with them, even though they're going to die. But they're going to die. I know for a fact that there's going to be...
That can be a military decision. But the point is, can you sacrifice a civilian? Military people are assets of the government. Soldiers are assets. They are meant to fight, maybe be sacrificed, maybe die. That's their job. Sorry. It is. That's why I also don't buy this idea of we can't militarily occupy Gaza because we're going to be constantly losing soldiers. Okay, well, we were constantly getting rockets fired at us. If that's the price of security, that's the price that we have to pay. And then it's the government's job to say, how do I protect my soldiers? Maybe I need to cleanse the area. I don't know. That's a separate conversation. Okay, but fundamentally, the government's job is to protect its civilians from harm and to create a secure and safe environment for them to live at the expense of everyone else. Everyone else. That's the point. And the minute you get into this moral relativism and start saying, well, how much am I allowed to protect my people when it's hurt someone else? You lost. You lost the fight, you lost the moral high ground, you lost the argument, and that's the position we are in today. We are in a war where, for the first time in all of human history, and it's been reviewed, the people fighting the war are helping the enemy supply. It's insane. It's never happened. We're doing it because we bought
And we're being
into
told we
this,
didn't do it enough.
and
And
we're still getting
and the
shellacked
United
at
States of
us.
America is still saying we're not doing enough. To
And
help
America, who
our
doesn't
enemy.
have boots on the ground, had a person hurt, critically injured this morning who apparently doesn't wear boots, I guess. He just came and was barefoot in Gaza, therefore Biden didn't lie. Fine, whatever. Your own civilian security is paramount. And that means if you have to conquer a neighboring nation, that's what you have to do. You have to do all things. Why did you build a nuclear arsenal? Why is it there?
Well, I mean, assuming we have a nuclear arsenal, I would assume that in today's world there would be many, many people in our country that would tell you that we don't need it.
Fine. I'm not them.
No, just to say, like, no, I'm agreeing with you. Something that was obvious in the past. I think I'm saying this as a bad, it's the corrupted minds and the way the world works today. I think that America, by the way, if we now started building, they would look at us equal as Iran. Just because happens to be that Iran is stating they want to kill us, and we are stating we don't want to kill anyone ever. But they would look at us as complete equivalents, as two countries that want to get a nuclear, and they would say you should not have a nuclear.
You're probably
warfare.
right, and we wouldn't side with that side. Like that wouldn't be our moral stance, because we believe that strength creates peace. That's a position. It's a political position, and that's our position. That's my position, and I believe it's yours. That's okay. The point is that a nuclear weapon, and all the countries that own nuclear weapons and that built them, are the embodiment of this concept. It is that I can cause and should cause mass destruction to my enemies if they are threatening my civilians. If they are going to threaten my people, they are all going to die. Nagasaki, Hiroshima, every major event was the sacrificing of enemy civilians to protect your own.
And once again, with the social media of today and the access to liberal media that exists today, I believe that you would not be able to do those things. I believe that
do you think
Dresden
anyone,
would not happen. The attack, you would see German
anyone
kids dying
in the media,
and they would stop it.
Do you think anyone in the media knew that nuke was going to drop until it already fell?
No, I'm just saying, but after it would be looked upon.
And it was, and it is today.
Right.
People today, most people that you talk to who don't actually study the issue, will say, "Oh, America shouldn't have done that. That was bad." They'll say that because it's easy to say, because yeah, you killed a lot of people. You erased, I think, how many cities? 26 full cities. Yeah, it's really bad. And it ended a war. And if we would have done the difficult and right thing 70 years ago and ended the Palestinian problem in whichever way, I don't even care how, right? Push them all out, get rid of them, end this, then every single Palestinian today would have a better life. That's the moral point, is that you created a generational trauma and generational refugee status. These people, these children are raised as victims, and they are traumatized because they're taught to be traumatized. Because we created this never-ending cycle that they live in, and that is holy to them. Those children would probably have good jobs and families and lives if we would have pushed them all out and ended this fight 70 years ago. The fact that we keep trying to do the nice thing causes immense suffering, not just to us, but to them as well. Things have to end. You have to cauterize the wound. You have to stop. This cycle can never end as long as both people are here. And since we don't plan on going anywhere, we need to solve our problem. I understand the world taking a position of, well, there's two people fighting, let's figure out a compromise. That's not your position. Your position is to win. Your position is, we have built one of the strongest societies on the world in a tiny, pretty crappy piece of land. They didn't. They could have. They didn't. They instead decided to constantly try to kill ours. We're done. We are done. I don't understand why we talk to them. I don't understand why we do not just treat them as the Nazis they are. They are enemies of our country. They declare it. They don't pretend. They don't hide. Japan was pretending to be in talks for peace when they launched Pearl Harbor. They don't do that. They tell you. They tell you every time. Death to Israel, death to America, death to the Great Sedan, death to Western. One day soon, Islam will rule the world, and all Jews and all Christians will be killed, and nature will turn against the Jews and warn you, there's a Jew hiding behind this rock. Come kill them. That's what they believe. It's what they want. They don't hide it. What are we doing?
Okay, so for our last topic of the day, we're going to go a little bit more into local politics. So between Gallant and Smotrich, Gallant, the Minister of Defense, and Smotrich, the Minister of Finance, and a minister in the Ministry of Defense, there is a power struggle that's been happening since the forming of the government on the power that is given within Judea and Samaria, and the power influence on the army itself. So there's a lot to discuss. We're not going to get into all of it. The one thing that happened this week that I want to discuss is so Smotrich has been saying for a while, and I know that you actually have very strong opinions on the matter. We discussed a while back. Smotrich has been mentioning for a while that he is insisting on getting, as the Ministry of Finance, Minister of Finance, he's insisting on opening up a committee for checking the expenses of the army. Does not have to do with the war that's happening right now.
It does.
No, the war is exponential expenses that need to be checked. But this is something he's been stating for a long time, that the expenses of the army, and for those listening will be clear, the expenses of the army, obviously I don't remember the exact percentage, but are the largest expense of the Israeli government. But more than that, it's the largest expense that we have almost no information on. It's this big black box of just a massive amount of money that's pushed in and is spread out in various ways, and often not done correctly and spent on things that it shouldn't be spent on. The excuse that the army gives is that it's classified and they can't know what we're spending on, and therefore and their most. But then Smotrich says to that, okay, that's fine. I don't that's why we have a committee. I'm not saying send the whole public. We have a committee that has classification that should know every expense that's happening and be able to test the expenses. He's been insisting on that. Gallant, the Minister of Defense, and obviously the army is standing heels over head saying it's not going to happen. We're not going to allow it. We're not going to open up this committee. Don't really give an excuse for why they're not going to open this committee. They don't give a reasoning that is strong enough. But what they do, and this is where it becomes political, is Gallant, for example, coming saying, we need to buy planes. There's a crucial equipment for the government, for the army, and if Smotrich does not approve the finances to purchase these planes, they'll be delayed by 4 years and cost us, billions of shekels. And his answer is again, wonderful. So open up the committee and then we'll do it. And this week I wanted to touch on what happened with the cabinet and why Smotrich left the cabinet, and then what do you think should be happening in this situation?
Okay, so let's start with what actually happened. Right, last night there was a cabinet meeting. The agenda for the meeting was to discuss the specific expenditures and this committee, and basically how to handle this. The army and Gallant came into the meeting and tried to steamroll it. They basically just started making demands, again, for new funds from Misrad Autzar, from the Treasury, in order to fund all of these military. We don't get a breakdown of what it is. And Smotrich said, wait a minute, I don't understand. This is a cabinet meeting. I'm here to be briefed on the situation and how well you're doing and what's going on, and to discuss the functioning of this committee. You're asking me questions that belong in the committee with the professionals. They weren't invited to this meeting. The people who actually work on budgeting aren't here. What are you doing? They were trying to ambush him for approvals, so he said, sorry, if we're not going to talk about anything serious, I'm leaving. And he up and left the cabinet meeting. This made waves, Gallant did the same thing a few weeks ago where he stormed out of the meeting because he wasn't happy with questioning that was happening. It's a political statement. It's fairly common. going to the issue at hand, that's a question of how much time we have left.
We have a few minutes.
Okay, so then we have to do this on a very superficial level. Broadly speaking, Israel has a serious problem of a rogue military complex. It exists to an extent in America too, but because in America the president is commander-in-chief, you have a blockage there. Ma'arechet HaBitachon, that's the Shabak, the Mossad, and Tzahal, have taken it upon themselves to actually run and control the country. They will tell you themselves that they view politicians as an inconvenience. They're just annoying. They're just in the way. They have to listen to us because we're the security experts. They just eventually need to do what we're told. And we've seen time and again that they tailor and only tell the government politicians certain information in order to guide them to a certain conclusion. They do not let them make decisions because they fundamentally don't believe that, well, they don't believe in democracy. Just on a basic level. Now, that's a larger problem. Specifically on budgeting. The army's budgets are absurd. The fact that they have no oversight is unacceptable. There's no argument to be made. None. At all. There are people who have very high security clearance. There are people who have the top security clearance. Basically, everyone in the cabinet. Anyone who sits in the cabinet has full security clearance.
Okay. Well, they're not informed of most things that happen in this war period.
No,
regardless of expenses.
They have security clearance. I'm just saying that they have the clearance to know things.
Officially.
So there are no sodot that they cannot disclose to the members of the cabinet in terms of expenditures. The fact that they don't is telling. It says something. The fact that they are so resistant to the idea of a committee reviewing the spending of the army tells us something. The fact that they have the audacity to ask for more money goes to show us that they have learned absolutely nothing from their failures. We all pretended that October 7th was going to be this shedding light moment where everyone would realize these core issues that they believed and we kept letting them believe, and now disaster occurred and now they'll learn their lesson. No, they didn't learn anything. Anything at all. They are right. They control. Don't ask them questions. How dare you ask the Ramatkal a question about how he's running the war? How dare you? I'm sorry. Who does he work for? Now, Gallant is a Trojan horse in this government. He was during the judicial reform. He was before that. Gallant is a real problem that Netanyahu doesn't know how to solve.
I don't know if he can.
Right, because he knows that firing him would cause anarchy. He saw it happen last time. Now, there's an argument to be made that we are in a different place right now, and the public's in a different place.
Could be worse, but yes. Could be easier, or could be worse.
The lack of anyone showing up to Kaplan last Motzei Shabbos suggests that maybe you'd be fine.
Or again, I just want to say, or the answer would be that all they need to relight these people, which are staying home because they're saying we're in a war, it's not the time, we don't want a thing, is all you need is something like this, and it won't, not just will it burn the streets, but even when you bring it back, they're all going to be back in because they're going to know we got to get rid of him.
Maybe that's the calculation that he's having to do, and it's putting us where we are, which is fundamentally stuck. Right? Because our president, our prime minister, and our Minister of Defense do not agree, and the way our political system is structured, the Prime Minister's only real authority on the matter is to fire him. He cannot actually direct the military because he's not in command of the military. It's a problem. It's a problem that we are now, meaning I've been arguing it's a problem for years. I argue that the lack of authority that our government has across all areas, it's a bureaucratic system. Now we've been shown this year that we don't live in a democracy basically in any way. The military controls one aspect, and we live in a judicial autocracy on the other side. right? Between the judges and the military. I don't know why anyone would want to be a politician. They can't do anything, and they get blamed for everything.
Okay, so I accept that, but that's also a whole other conversation that we're not going to get into now. But the only one thing is that I actually would say that the fact that the Minister of Defense, I'm a big believer that in the parliamentary system, democratically all the way around, I think the minister should have full authority, and the only authority the prime minister has is to fire them. I think that's a good thing because there's nothing stopping him except for political reasons to fire him. And that is exactly what it should be. I don't want the prime minister to hold the other around, because then what it would mean is that Bezalel Smotrich should have the ability. I'm Minister of Finance, the finance minister. He should be able to do all these decisions, and it should affect the entire country because he was chosen. And the prime minister should have no allowance to override him or force it. What he should be allowed to do is fire him.
No.
If we're not arguing, I'm firing you.
No, for multiple reasons. Okay? The first is the first thing you said. Parliamentary systems. You may actually be more right in an appointment-based system. But in our parliamentary system, in a system that has to put together a governing coalition, that structure is impossible. And we see it today. It doesn't work. It's impossible because it's not as simple as appointing someone and firing someone. That someone represents a certain amount of votes. And if you need them, if I need what we saw, right? Bennett became prime minister. If I need your 4 seats, that means you represent a tiny minority of the country. You can demand Sar HaBitachon. You can demand to be Sar HaBitachon because I need you to form my coalition. And then you're saying that the full authority to use the Israeli military belongs in the hands of 4 seats of the Knesset. That doesn't make sense. It can't work because our system is designed based on power from blackmail. It's how coalitions are designed. So you're basically creating scenarios where minorities hold aspects of the country hostage as a negotiating factor.
Okay. That wraps up our episode. Thank you very much for listening and watching. You can see us on YouTube and listen to us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. We will be here next week. Thank you for joining me. This was Here We Go Again.